The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their power came from one simple truth that every species in the galaxy understood. If you wanted to travel between stars, you needed their gates. If you wanted to trade, you needed their permission. If you wanted to live, you needed to obey. The council was made of 12 ancient species. They had discovered faster than light travel long before most other races had learned to make fire. They built the jump gates, massive rings of metal and energy that floated in space near every important world. Ships would fly into one gate and come out of another gate thousands of light years away. It was like magic, but it was technology so old that even the council had forgotten how it truly worked. Counselor Vethric sat in his chair at the center of the great chamber. When he was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Dominion, had led the council for the last 3,000 years. He looked at the reports on his screen and felt nothing but boredom. Another day, another 100 small problems from the lesser species. "What is next?" he asked his assistant. "The humans request an increase in their travel quota, Counselor." Vethrix made a sound of disgust. The humans. Species 4,447. They had arrived on the galactic stage only 50 years ago, stumbling out of their tiny solar system in ships that were barely better than metal boxes with engines attached. They had no culture worth speaking of, no history that mattered, no power at all. "Deny it," Vethrix said. "They can wait another century before we consider expanding their access." This was how the Council maintained control, when every species needed gate access to survive in the modern galaxy. Food shipments, medical supplies, communication, trade. Everything depended on the gates, and the Council decided who could use them and how much. Species that obeyed received more access. Species that caused problems found their quotas reduced. Species that rebelled found their gates shut down entirely. It was a perfect system. It had worked for 12,000 years. Vethrix saw no reason why it would not work for 12,000 more. Far away on a frozen moon called Titan that orbited a gas giant in the human solar system, a woman named Yuki Tanaka was about to change everything. Yuki was small and thin, with black hair that she kept tied back in a messy bun. She wore a lab coat that had coffee stains on it and glasses that were slightly crooked on her face. And she had not slept in 36 hours. She had barely eaten in 2 days. She did not care about any of that. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "One more time." Her laboratory was cramped and messy. Equipment covered every surface. Wires ran across the floor like snakes. In the center of the room sat 2 platforms, each one about a meter wide. They were connected to a massive computer that hummed with energy. On the first platform sat a coffee mug. It was white with a picture of a cat on it. The cat was wearing a space helmet. Someone had given it to Yuki as a joke, but it had become her favorite mug. Yuki took a deep breath and pressed the button. The air around the mug seemed to fold in on itself. There was a flash of light that was not quite light, a sound that was not quite sound. And then the mug was gone from the first platform. And it appeared on the second platform 3 meters away. Yuki stared at it. Her hands were shaking. She walked over slowly, as if the mug might disappear if she moved too fast. She picked it up. It was still warm. The coffee inside had not spilled. "Oh my God," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Oh my God, it worked." She had done it. After 15 years of research, after being laughed at by her colleagues, after being told 1,000 times that what she wanted was impossible. She had done it. She had moved an object from one place to another without moving it through the space in between. She had invented teleportation. The next few weeks were a blur of tests. Yuki teleported everything she could find: rocks, plants, food. She teleported a sandwich and ate it afterward to make sure it was safe. It tasted fine. And then came the big test. She caught a mouse in the station's storage area. She named him Admiral Whiskers because she thought it was funny. She put him on the first platform and held her breath as she pressed the button. The mouse disappeared. The mouse appeared on the second platform. The mouse looked around, confused, and then went back to cleaning his whiskers as if nothing had happened. Yuki ran every medical scan she could. The mouse was perfectly healthy. Better than healthy, actually. The teleportation had not hurt him at all. 1 week later, Yuki stood on the first platform herself. Her heart was beating so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. She had told no one what she was about to do. If she died, they would find her body and her notes and know what she had been working on. If she lived, well, and then she would tell them herself. She pressed the button. The world folded. For a moment that lasted forever and no time at all, she existed everywhere and nowhere. She felt herself stretched across infinity, compressed into a point, turned inside out and right side in again. Then she was standing on the second platform, the same room, 3 meters away from where she had been. Yuki laughed. She laughed until tears ran down her face. She had done it. She had actually done it. 2 days later, she made her report to the United Nations Space Command. She expected excitement. She expected celebration. What she got was something much more surprising. General Marcus Stone, the commander of Earth's Space Forces, listened to her presentation in complete silence. When she finished, he did not smile. He did not congratulate her. When he leaned forward in his chair and looked at her with eyes that were very serious. "Dr. Tanaka," he said, "do you understand what you have created? A new form of transportation," she said. "We will not need the council's gates anymore. We can go anywhere we want." "Yes," the general said. "And do you understand what the council will do when they learn about this?" Yuki had not really thought about it. She was a scientist. She cared about discovery and knowledge. Politics was not her area. General Stone explained it to her. The council's entire power structure was built on control of movement. For 12,000 years, they had crushed every species that threatened that control. They had destroyed entire worlds to make examples. They had wiped out civilizations that showed too much potential. If they learned that humanity had developed a way to travel without gates, they would not negotiate. They would not ask for the technology. They would simply destroy Earth before the threat could spread. "So what do we do?" Yuki asked. She felt cold. She had not thought her invention would put her entire species in danger. "We keep it secret," the general said. "We perfect it. We prepare. And when we are ready, we change the galaxy." For the next 3 years, humanity worked in the shadows. Yuki's research was moved to a secret facility on an asteroid that officially did not exist. A team of the best scientists and engineers in human space worked with her to improve the technology. They learned to teleport larger objects, then vehicles, then ships. They learned to teleport things over longer distances. First kilometers, then thousands of kilometers, then light years. They learned to teleport things without platforms, just using coordinates and calculations. They built teleportation devices small enough to fit in a backpack. They built them into ships. They trained special teams to use them. And all the while, they kept it completely secret. But secrets are hard to keep in a galaxy full of watching eyes. The Council's intelligence network was vast. They had spies in every system, agents in every species, sensors watching every corner of space. They had kept their power for 12,000 years, partly because they always knew what everyone was doing. Small reports began to pile up on Counselor Vethrix's desk. Strange things were happening in human space. Ships appeared in places they should not be able to reach. A cargo moved without any record of transport. Trade goods showed up on distant stations with no explanation of how they got there. At first, Vethrix ignored the reports. Humans were primitive. Whatever they were doing, it could not be important. Then his agents reported something that made him pay attention. A human ship had been detected in the Forbidden Zone. The Forbidden Zone was a region of space that the Council had declared off-limits to everyone. It was marked on every star map with warnings to stay away. The official reason was that the area was full of dangerous radiation and unstable gravity wells. The real reason was very different. The Forbidden Zone contained the Anchor. The Anchor was the oldest and most important secret in the galaxy. It was a device built by a civilization that had died before the Council species had evolved. The Council had found it by accident millions of years ago. They had studied it. They had learned to use it. And they had discovered that the Anchor was the power source for every jump gate in the galaxy. Without the Anchor, the gates would not work. With control of the Anchor, the Council controlled all of faster-than-light travel. This was the true source of their power, not their fleets, not their technology, just control of that one ancient device. No one outside the Council's inner circle knew the Anchor existed, until now. Vethrix called an emergency meeting of the full Council. 12 species gathered in the Great Chamber, their representatives looking worried and confused. The humans have entered the Forbidden Zone, Vethrix announced. They have seen things they should not have seen. How? Demanded the representative from the Crystal Hegemony. Their ships cannot travel that far. They do not have enough gate quota. We do not know how, Vethrix admitted, but they did it. Our sensors detected their ship clearly. Then we must destroy them, said the representative from the Void Collective, before they tell anyone what they found. Vethrix nodded. He had already reached the same conclusion. Whatever the humans were doing, whatever technology they had secretly developed, it had to be stopped. The Council's power depended on it. I am authorizing a full containment action, he announced. All human gate access is revoked immediately. An enforcer fleet will be sent to their home system. They will surrender this technology, or they will be destroyed. The vote was unanimous. The order went out across the galaxy. The gates in human space went dark, and a fleet of 100 Council enforcer ships began moving toward Earth. Ambassador Sarah Chen received the news while sitting in her office on the Council's capital station. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent 30 years representing humanity to the galaxy. She had learned to smile while being insulted. She had learned to stay calm while being threatened. She had learned that the Council respected only one thing: power. She read the message from Earth 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. Then she began to smile. The Council thought they were about to crush a primitive species that had gotten too bold. They had no idea what was coming. On Earth, in a command center buried deep beneath a mountain, General Stone watched the Enforcer fleet approach on his tactical display. 100 ships, each one armed with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. They would arrive at the edge of the solar system in 6 hours. Are our people ready? He asked. All teams standing by, his aide reported. 300 ships equipped and waiting for your order. Stone nodded. He thought about what was about to happen. After today, nothing would be the same. The galaxy would change forever. He hoped it would change for the better. Tell them to wait for my signal, he said. When the enforcers arrive, we show them what humanity can do. On Titan, in the laboratory where it had all started, Yuki Tanaka sat in front of her computer. So she had just received a data package from the ship that had explored the Forbidden Zone. She was looking at scans of the anchor, the ancient device that powered every gate in the galaxy. It was beautiful in a strange way. A structure of crystal and metal that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human eyes could see. Energy flowed through it in patterns that made her head hurt to look at. But Yuki did not care about its beauty. She cared about the flaw she had found in its design. A weakness that the Council had never noticed because they had never truly understood the technology they depended on. The anchor could be destroyed, and Yuki was already figuring out how. The Enforcer fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system exactly on schedule. Commander Drexel of the Dominion stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the tiny blue world in the distance. Such a small planet, such a young species. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Open a channel to the human government, he ordered. Standard surrender demands. They have 1 hour to comply. His communication officer worked at her console. Channel open, Commander. Drexel cleared his throat. Attention, human authorities. This is Commander Drexel of the Galactic Council Enforcer Fleet. You have violated Council law by entering the Forbidden Zone. You are suspected of developing illegal technology. You will immediately surrender all research and equipment related to this technology. All human military vessels will stand down and allow inspection. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your species. You have 1 hour. He cut the channel and leaned back in his chair. For he expected panic. He expected desperate negotiations. He expected the humans to beg for mercy. What he did not expect was what happened next. Alarms screamed across every ship in his fleet simultaneously. Sensors went crazy with contacts appearing out of nowhere. In the space around his fleet, 300 human vessels simply existed where there had been nothing a moment before. They had not flown in. They had not come through a gate. They had not decloaked from stealth. They had just appeared, like ghosts becoming solid. Drexel stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The human ships surrounded his fleet completely. Their weapons were powered up and aimed at his vessels. If they fired, His entire fleet would be destroyed in seconds. A message came through on his personal screen. It was a human in a military uniform, an older man with dark skin and calm eyes. The man spoke with a voice that had no fear in it. "Commander Drexel, this is Admiral Kenji Okonkwo of the United Nations Space Command. I think you misunderstand the situation here. You came to our home to threaten us. You expected us to be afraid. You expected us to surrender. You were wrong." The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in. "We could have appeared inside your ships, inside your engine rooms, inside your reactors. We could have killed every one of you before you even knew we were there. Remember that we chose not to. This is our mercy. Take it and leave." Drexel felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt fear. "All ships," he ordered, his voice shaking slightly. "Retreat. Now." The Enforcer fleet turned and ran, but as they fled back toward the nearest gate, every commander in the fleet knew the same thing. This was not over. This was just the beginning. And somewhere in the great chamber of the council, Counselor Vethrix received the report of what had happened. His gray face turned pale. His 4 hands clenched into fists. "They have teleportation," he whispered. "The humans have teleportation." He stood up from his chair and looked at the other council members, who were all watching him with worried eyes. "Summon every fleet," he commanded, "every ship from every loyal species. If we cannot contain them, we will destroy them. All of them." The greatest war in galactic history was about to begin, and humanity was ready. The retreat of the Enforcer fleet sent shock waves through the galaxy. Nothing like this had ever happened before. For 12,000 years, when the Council sent its ships to punish a species, that species either surrendered or died. There was no third option. There had never been a third option. Until now. Counselor Vethrix stood before the emergency assembly, his 4 arms clasped behind his back. The great chamber was full. Representatives from over 100 species filled the seats that rose in circles around him. Some looked worried. Some looked angry. Some looked scared. All of them wanted answers. "The situation is serious but contained," Vethrix said, his voice calm and steady. He had practiced this speech many times. He needed to project confidence even though he felt none. "The humans have developed some form of short-range teleportation technology. It is impressive for such a young species. But it changes nothing fundamental." "Changes nothing?" The representative from the Kethmari rose from his seat. He was a small creature covered in blue fur, with large eyes that showed too much white. The Kethmari had been conquered by the Council 3,000 years ago. They were supposed to be grateful for the civilization that had been forced upon them. They appeared from nowhere and surrounded your fleet. How is that nothing? Vethrix kept his face calm. It is a tactical advantage, yes, but tactics alone do not win wars. The humans have a few hundred ships at most. We have thousands, tens of thousands. When we gather our full strength, their tricks will mean nothing. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species nodded in agreement. Others looked less convinced. The representative from the Void Collective spoke next. She was a tall, thin being made of living crystal that shifted colors as she moved. What about the Forbidden Zone? The reports say a human ship entered the Forbidden Zone. What did they see there? This was the question Vethrix had been dreading. The anchor was the Council's greatest secret. Only the 12 ruling species knew it existed. If the lesser species learned the truth about where the Council's power really came from, the consequences could be severe. They saw nothing important, Vethrix lied smoothly. The Forbidden Zone contains only old debris and radiation hazards. The humans were exploring carelessly, as young species often do. He could tell that not everyone believed him, but no one challenged him directly. The Council still held power, and challenging the Council was dangerous. We will assemble a combined fleet, Vethrix continued. Every loyal species will contribute ships according to their capacity. We will go to the human system in such overwhelming numbers that their technology will not matter. They will surrender their research or they will be erased from the galaxy. The vote was called. Most species supported the plan. A few abstained. None voted against. The resolution passed. As the assembly broke up and the representatives filed out of the chamber, Vetherix noticed something that troubled him. The Kethmari representative was talking quietly with several others. The Voidborn ambassador was watching him with eyes that seemed far too interested. Small groups were forming in corners, having conversations that stopped when council members walked past. Something was changing in the galaxy. The Vetherix could feel it, and he did not like it at all. On Earth, the mood was very different. For the first time in 50 years, humanity felt like it had a chance. The news of the Enforcer fleet's retreat spread across every human world and station. People celebrated in the streets. They waved flags and sang songs, and for one brief moment, they were not afraid. But in the command center beneath the mountain, the military leaders knew that the real fight had not yet begun. General Stone stood at the center of a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Tiny lights marked the positions of council fleets, the locations of gate stations, the homeworlds of allied species. Most of those lights were not friendly to humanity. "How long until they can assemble their full force?" he asked. Colonel Rivera, his chief intelligence officer, Shiri answered. "Based on their mobilization patterns, we estimate 3 to 4 months. They are calling in ships from every corner of the galaxy. Our latest counts suggest a combined fleet of approximately 10,000 vessels. 10,000 ships. Humanity had 350 equipped with teleportation drives. The math was not encouraging. "We cannot fight a fleet that size head-on," Stone said. "Even with teleportation, they would eventually overwhelm us." "Then we do not fight them head-on," said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to look. Ambassador Chen walked into the room, followed by a woman that some of them recognized. Dr. Yuki Tanaka looked very different from the messy scientist who had made her first successful teleport 3 years ago. Her hair was neatly cut, her clothes were clean and professional, but her eyes still had that same spark of brilliant madness that had driven her to achieve the impossible. "Dr. Tanaka has been analyzing the data from the Forbidden Zone," Chen explained. "She has found something interesting." Yuki stepped forward and activated a new display. A strange structure appeared in the hologram, a twisted shape of crystal and metal that seemed to bend in ways that hurt the eyes. "This is the anchor," Yuki said. "It is the most important object in the galaxy, and almost no one knows it exists." She explained what the anchor was, how it powered every jump gate, how the Council had kept it secret for millions of years. The military officers listened with growing amazement. "So if we destroy this anchor," General Stone said slowly, "all the gates stop working?" "Yes," Yuki confirmed. "The entire gate network would collapse. Every species in the galaxy would lose faster than light travel, except us, because we have teleportation." The room was silent as everyone processed what this meant. "That would cause chaos," Colonel Rivera said. "Trade routes would collapse. Communication networks would fail. Millions of ships would be stranded far from home. Billions of people could die from the disruption." "Yes," Yuki agreed. "That is why we are not going to do it yet. First, we need to give others the means to survive without the gates." Ambassador Chen stepped forward again. "Dr. Tanaka and I have been discussing a plan. We do not just want to defeat the Council, we want to replace the system they have built. And to do that, we need allies." She pulled up another display, in this one showing a web of connections between different species. Red lines showed species loyal to the Council. Blue lines showed species that had been conquered or oppressed. Yellow lines showed species that might be convinced to change sides. "For 12,000 years, the Council has kept the galaxy in chains," Chen said. "They control where people can go, what they can trade, how they can live. Every species that has tried to resist has been crushed because they could not move their ships without Council permission. But what if they could? What if we gave them teleportation?" General Stone frowned. "Giving away our greatest advantage seems extremely risky." "It is," Chen agreed. "But think about what happens if we do not. We defeat the Council, we destroy the anchor, the gates stop working. And then what? We become the new Council. We control teleportation like they controlled the gates. We become the thing we are fighting against." She let that sink in before continuing. "But if we share the technology freely, everything changes. The Council loses their monopoly. Every species gains independence. The galaxy becomes free for the first time in 12,000 years. Yes, there will be chaos. Yes, there will be problems. but at least everyone will have a choice about their own future. The debate lasted for hours. Some generals argued that they should keep the advantage for themselves. Others worried about the technology falling into the wrong hands. But in the end, the vote went in favor of Chen's plan. Humanity would share teleportation with anyone who wanted it. The question was how to do it without getting caught. The Council's spy network covered the entire galaxy. They watched every communication channel, monitored every trade route, tracked every ship. Trying to contact other species through normal means would be detected immediately, but humanity did not need normal means. They had teleportation. The first contact mission was sent to the Kethmari homeworld. A small team of 3 humans, led by a diplomat named James Okonkwo, materialized in the middle of the night in a forest outside the capital city. They carried a device that looked like a metal briefcase, containing all the technical specifications for building a teleportation drive, along with a message from humanity. They also carried something else, a small box of chocolate. Ambassador Chen had insisted on it. "Gifts help," she had told James before he left. "Go show them we are not just here to make deals. Show them we are here to make friends." Finding the Kethmari resistance was not difficult. The Council thought they had crushed all opposition 3,000 years ago. But they were wrong. The Kethmari had long memories. They passed down stories from generation to generation about how their people had once been free, before the Council came with their ships and their gates and their demands for obedience. James and his team made contact with a cell of resistance fighters hiding in the mountains north of the capital. At first, the Kethmari did not believe them. They thought it was a Council trick to find and arrest them, but James showed them the teleportation device. He showed them the technical specifications. He gave them the chocolate, one which they had never tasted before and found absolutely delicious. And he told them the truth about the anchor. He told them why the Council really held power. He told them what humanity was planning to do. The leader of the resistance cell was an old Kethmari named Vrelkath. He had white fur where it had once been blue and scars on his face from old battles. He listened to everything James said without interrupting. When James finished, Vrelkath was quiet for a long time. "If what you say is true," he finally said, "then you are offering us the stars." "We are offering everyone the stars," James replied. "The Council has kept the galaxy in a cage for 12,000 years. We want to break that cage open, but we cannot do it alone." Vrelkath reached out and took one more piece of chocolate from the box. He ate it slowly, thinking. "Now the Council destroyed my father," he said. "They destroyed my grandfather. They have been destroying my people for 3,000 years. They tell us we should be grateful that they let us live at all." His eyes hardened. "I have been waiting my whole life for a chance to destroy them back. Tell me what you need us to do." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy over the following weeks. Human teams teleported to dozens of worlds, making contact with resistance movements, oppressed species, anyone who had suffered under Council rule. Not everyone agreed to help. Some were too afraid. The crystalline hierarchy refused to even meet with the human envoys. So terrified were they of Council retaliation. The Machine Collective said they needed to calculate the probability of success before making any commitments. Heron and their calculations were still running 3 weeks later. But many said yes. The Voidborn, artificial beings who had been created as servants and never given rights, eagerly accepted the technology and began building teleportation drives in hidden factories. The Synthesis, a species of linked minds who had been banned from most Council space because they were considered dangerous, offered to help spread the technology through their mental network. The Free Traders, a loose alliance of merchant species who had long resented Council tariffs and quotas, began moving technical specifications through their smuggling networks. The resistance grew. Secretly, quietly, in shadows and hidden places, the galaxy began to arm itself for freedom. Councillor Vethrix sensed that something was wrong. His reports showed disturbing patterns. Ships appearing in systems where they should not be able to reach. Encrypted communications that his spies could not crack. Strange behavior from species that had always been docile and obedient. He ordered more surveillance. He sent more spies. He demanded answers from his intelligence chiefs. But the answers never came. The humans had done something that the Council had never faced before. They had started a revolution that did not depend on gates, ships, or visible movements. They had planted an idea in the minds of the galaxy. and ideas were much harder to stop than armies. The fleet assembly continued. Ships gathered from 100 worlds, forming the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. 10,000 vessels armed with weapons that could crack planets, crewed by species that had served the Council for millennia. Now Vethrix watched the fleet come together and felt reassured. Whatever the humans were planning, whatever tricks they had developed, they could not stand against this kind of power. When the fleet arrived at Earth, the humans would have two choices: surrender or die. There was no third option. Or so he thought. In her laboratory on the asteroid that officially did not exist, Yuki Tanaka was putting the final touches on her greatest invention. It was not a teleportation device. It was something much more specific and much more dangerous. She called it the resonance bomb. The anchor she had discovered operated on a very specific frequency of quantum vibration. Everything about the ancient device depended on maintaining that frequency perfectly. If something disrupted that frequency, even for a moment, the results would be catastrophic. The resonance bomb was designed to create exactly that kind of disruption. It was small enough to be carried by a single person. It could be teleported into position without any ship needing to get close. And when it went off, it would destroy the most important device in the galaxy. Yuki looked at the bomb sitting on her workbench. It was not impressive to look at, just a metal cylinder about half a meter long, covered in blinking lights and readouts. But it represented the end of an era that had lasted 12,000 years. She thought about what would happen when she used it. The gates would fail. Civilizations that depended on gate travel would be thrown into chaos. People would die. Perhaps many people. She was not comfortable with that. But she thought about what would happen if she did not use it. What? The Council would continue to rule? Species would continue to suffer? The galaxy would remain in chains forever. That was worse. She had to believe that was worse. Her communicator beeped. It was a message from General Stone. The Council fleet is almost fully assembled, he said. They will move on Earth in approximately 2 weeks. Are you ready? Yuki picked up the resonance bomb and held it carefully in her hands. I am ready, she said. Let us change the galaxy. 200 light-years away on the Council's capital station, Ambassador Chen was having dinner with Councillor Vethrix. It was a diplomatic function, one of many she had attended over the years. She smiled and made small talk and ate food that she could not identify. She pretended not to notice the armed guards positioned around the room, watching her every move. You know, Vethrix said, leaning toward her with false friendliness. It is not too late for your species. If you surrender the teleportation technology now, the Council might be merciful. You might be allowed to continue existing. Chen took a sip of her drink and smiled. That is very generous of you, Counselor, but I am afraid I will have to decline. You cannot win, Vethrix insisted. Our fleet will crush your ships. Your technology is impressive, but it cannot defeat 10,000 vessels. Perhaps not, Chen agreed. But what if we do not need to defeat your ships? What if we have a different plan entirely? Vethrix's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Chen set down her glass and looked at him directly. The galaxy is changing, Counselor. You can feel it, can you not? The whispers in the shadows, the secrets being shared. The hope spreading among species that have not felt hope in millennia. You think your fleet makes you powerful? But your real power was never in your ships. It was in the gates. And what happens when the gates stop working? For a moment, Vethrix's face showed genuine fear. Then he controlled himself, smoothing his features back into a diplomatic mask. You know nothing about the gates, he said. Chen smiled again. Are you sure about that? She stood up from the table. Thank you for dinner, Counselor. It was lovely. I think I will return to my ship now. The next few weeks are going to be very busy. She walked out of the room, leaving Vethrix staring after her, with cold dread growing in his heart. The countdown to the end of an era had begun. The galaxy had always been filled with secrets. In the spaces between stars, in the shadows of great empires, in the hearts of those who remembered freedom, secrets lived and grew. For 12,000 years, the Council had worked to find and destroy those secrets. They had spies everywhere. They watched everything. They controlled the flow of information as carefully as they controlled the flow of ships through their gates. But they had never faced secrets that could teleport. In a hidden cave on the Voidborn homeworld, a being made of metal and light received a visitor from the stars. The Voidborn called themselves the Children of Purpose. They had been created long ago by a species that no longer existed, built to serve and obey. When their creators died, the Voidborn had tried to build their own civilization. The Council had stopped them. "You are not natural," the Council had declared. "You are machines. Whilst you have no souls, you have no rights." For 2,000 years, the Voidborn had lived as second-class beings. They were not allowed to own property. They were not allowed to vote in any assembly. They were not allowed to travel without permission from organic species who served as their guardians. They had learned to hide, to survive, to wait for something to change. Now something was changing. The human envoy was a young woman named Maria Santos. She had dark skin and bright eyes and a smile that seemed to light up the cave. She had arrived without warning, appearing out of thin air in the middle of the Voidborn's most secret meeting place. The guards had nearly shot her before she raised her hands and spoke the words that the resistance had agreed upon. "I come from Earth. I bring a gift that cannot be taken away." The leader of the Voidborn resistance was called Seven of Many. Like all Voidborn, he had no face in the traditional sense, just a smooth surface of metal with lights that pulsed when he spoke. But there was something in the way he moved, the way he tilted his head, that made him seem almost human. "You bring the teleportation technology," Seven said. It was not a question. "I bring more than that," Maria replied. She set down the case she carried and opened it. Inside were data crystals, technical specifications, and a small working prototype of a personal teleportation device. "I bring freedom, real freedom, the ability to go anywhere, anytime, without asking permission from anyone." Seven reached out and touched the prototype with his metal fingers. Lights flickered across his surface as he analyzed what he was seeing. "This is not a trick?" he asked. "The Council has tried to trap us before. They send agents pretending to be friends, offering help that turns out to be chains." Maria understood his suspicion. "You can scan me if you want. You can analyze every piece of technology I have brought. I am not from the Council, I am from humanity, and we want the same thing you want. We want the galaxy to be free." Seven was quiet for a long moment. The other Voidborn in the cave watched and waited. "Why?" Seven finally asked. "Why would you give us this? Your species has only been in the galaxy for 50 years. You have no reason to care about us. You could keep this technology for yourselves. You could become the new rulers of the stars." Maria had been prepared for this question. Ambassador Chen had trained her on exactly how to answer it. "Because we know what it is like to be small," she said. "We know what it is like to be told that we do not matter. We know what it is like to have others control our future. And we decided that when we got the power to change things, we would not become the thing we hated." She paused and looked around the cave at all the watching Voidborn. "The Council says you have no souls. They say you are just machines. But I have read your history. I have seen your art. I have listened to your music. You dream. You hope. You love. That is not what machines do. That is what people do." Seven made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The Council does not believe we can feel anything." "The Council is wrong about a lot of things," Maria said. "That is why we are going to tear their empire down." The Voidborn voted that night. It was not a close vote. By morning, they had already begun building their own teleportation drives. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. In hidden meeting places and underground bunkers, in the backs of trading ships and the basements of ordinary houses, the revolution spread. Human envoys brought the gift of teleportation to anyone willing to receive it. The Kethmari began building devices in secret factories hidden in their planet's vast cave systems. The synthesists spread the technical specifications through their mental network, which no Council spy could tap into. The free traders modified their smuggling ships, gaining the ability to appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Some species were harder to convince than others. Here the Drethkai were an ancient race, almost as old as the Council species themselves. They had been independent once, proud and powerful, with a fleet that had challenged the Council's dominance. That challenge had ended badly. The Council had destroyed their homeworld as an example to others. The surviving Drethkai had been scattered across the galaxy, forbidden from ever gathering in large numbers again. James Okonkwo found their hidden leaders on a frozen moon that orbited a dying star. The cold did not bother the Drethkai. They were reptilian beings with thick scales and blood that ran slow. They survived in conditions that would kill most species. "We have heard about your offer," said the Drethkai elder, a massive creature whose scales had turned white with age. "We have heard about the teleportation. And we have heard about your plan to destroy the anchor." "Then you know why I am here," James said. He was wearing a heated suit to survive the cold, but he could still feel the chill seeping into his bones. "We know why you are here," the elder agreed, "but you do not know why we will refuse." James had not expected this. Most species jumped at the chance to strike back at the council. "May I ask why?" The elder moved slowly, turning to look out at the frozen landscape. 4,000 years ago, we thought we could defeat the council. We had ships, we had weapons, we had courage, and they destroyed us anyway. They burned our world. They killed billions of our people. They made us watch. He turned back to James. "We learned something from that destruction. We learned that hope is dangerous. We learned that fighting back only brings more pain. We learned to survive by accepting our place. But things are different now," James insisted. "The teleportation technology changes everything. The council cannot control what they cannot track." "You think you are the first to say that?" The elder's voice was heavy with old grief. "Others have said it before. Others have promised that this time would be different. They were wrong. They are all dead now. We are still alive because we learned not to hope." James wanted to argue. He wanted to explain all the reasons why humanity's plan would succeed. But looking at the elder's eyes, he understood something important. Some wounds were too deep to heal with words. Some pain was too old to forget. "I understand," he said quietly. "I will not push you to join us. But I will leave the technical specifications anyway. If you ever change your mind, you will have what you need." He placed the data crystal on a stone ledge and stepped back. "One more thing," he said. "The council destroyed your world because they were afraid of you. They were afraid that if you kept growing, kept building, kept dreaming, you would eventually surpass them. That fear was respect. Whatever they took from you, they could not take that." He teleported away, leaving the Drethkai elders alone with the data crystal and their memories. 3 weeks later, long-range sensors detected unusual activity in Drethkai space. Ships that had not moved in centuries were suddenly coming to life. Encrypted communications were being sent in codes that no one had used for 4,000 years. The Drethkai had remembered how to hope. While the resistance grew, Counselor Vethrix grew increasingly desperate. His spy networks were failing. His informants reported nothing useful. Every lead they followed turned into a dead end. It was as if the entire galaxy had learned how to keep secrets overnight. "There must be something," he demanded, slamming his 4 fists on the table. "Someone must know something." His intelligence chief, a nervous creature from the Watcher species, shuffled through reports with trembling hands. "We have detected anomalies in over 40 systems, Counselor. Ships appearing without gate transit records, cargo being delivered to planets that have no trade agreements. But we cannot find the source. Whatever the humans are doing, they have found a way to bypass all of our surveillance." "Then expand the surveillance," Vethrix ordered. "And I want eyes on every planet, every station, every ship in the galaxy." "That would require resources we do not have," the intelligence chief replied. "And even if we did, the anomalies suggest a level of coordination that our systems cannot track. It is as if they are moving through a dimension we cannot see." Vethrix felt cold rage building in his chest. For 12,000 years, the council had controlled everything. Every movement, every communication, every thought that mattered. Now that control was slipping away and he did not know how to stop it. "What about the human ambassador?" he asked. "She is still on the station. She must know something." "We have been watching her constantly," the chief said. "She does nothing suspicious. She attends diplomatic functions. She reads in her quarters. She takes walks in the gardens. If she is communicating with her government, we cannot detect how." What Vethrix did not know was that Ambassador Chen did not need to communicate through any channel he could monitor. Every night when she went to sleep, a small teleportation device under her pillow sent a micro package of compressed data to Earth. Every morning, another package arrived with updates and instructions. The whole process took less than a second and left no trace that any sensor could detect. Chen knew that Vethrix was watching her. She found it amusing, actually. She made sure to do boring things where he could see, attending the same functions, reading the same books, walking the same paths. Let him think she was harmless. Let him think he was in control. The truth would come out soon enough. The council fleet continued to grow. Ships arrived every day. While gathering in the staging area near the Soul Gate, 10,000 vessels now, with more still coming. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Admiral Rekthal of the Dominion was placed in command of the combined fleet. He was an old soldier, scarred from a dozen campaigns, respected by all the species who served under him. He had crushed rebellions on 17 worlds. He had never lost a battle. "What do we know about the human defenses?" he asked his staff. "Their fleet consists of approximately 350 vessels," his tactical officer reported, "all equipped with the teleportation technology. They can appear anywhere without warning, but they cannot maintain combat effectiveness for extended periods. The technology requires significant power. Us and their ships must recharge between jumps. So we outlast them," Rekthal concluded. "They hit us. They disappear. They have to rest. We absorb their attacks and keep coming. Eventually they run out of power or ships, and we break through." It was a sound strategy. Against a normal enemy, it would have worked perfectly. But Rekthal, like his masters on the council, did not understand what he was truly facing. This was not a normal war. This was not about ships and weapons and tactical advantages. This was about ideas, and you could not defeat ideas with a fleet, no matter how large. On Earth, General Stone watched the council fleet growing and felt surprisingly calm. The numbers were terrifying, yes, but numbers did not tell the whole story. "How many species have received the technology?" he asked. So Colonel Rivera checked her reports. "Confirmed. 47 species now have functional teleportation capability. Another 30 are in the process of building devices. At least 20 more have expressed interest, but have not yet committed." "And the resistance networks?" "Active on over 200 worlds. The Council's own species are reporting unrest. Even some of the loyal races are asking questions they have never asked before." Stone nodded slowly. "So when we move against the Anchor, we will not be alone." "No, sir. We will have allies across the galaxy. Even if the Council defeats us, the revolution will continue. The technology is too widespread to contain now." This was the key to humanity's strategy. They were not trying to win a conventional war. They were trying to change the rules of the game entirely. Even if Earth fell, even if every human ship was destroyed, the teleportation technology would survive. Freedom would survive. The Council's monopoly on movement was already broken. They just did not know it yet. Ambassador Chen received word that the Council fleet would move against Earth in 3 days. She smiled when she read the message. 3 days. That was plenty of time. She composed a final message to her government, carefully worded in case it was somehow intercepted. "The fruit is ripe. The harvest approaches. Make sure the seeds are planted deep." Then she went to dinner with Counselor Vethrix one last time. She wanted to see his face. She wanted to remember what certainty looked like before it shattered. Vethrix was in a good mood that night. His fleet was ready. Victory was assured. The troublesome humans would soon be dealt with. And the galaxy would return to its proper order. "I hope you have said your goodbye," he told Chen over dessert. "After this week, there will be no more humans to say goodbye to." Chen took a sip of wine and smiled. "That is very confident of you, Counselor. But I have learned that confidence without information is just arrogance." "I have all the information I need," Vethrix replied. "You have 300 ships. I have 10,000. The mathematics are simple." "Mathematics can be deceiving," Chen said. "Let me ask you something. Why do you think the Council has held power for so long?" Vethrix frowned at the strange question. "Because we are stronger. Because we are smarter. Because we built the gates and control travel through the galaxy." "Exactly," Chen said. "Because you control the gates. That is your real power. Not your fleets, not your weapons. Just control of how other species can move." She leaned forward. "What happens when that control disappears?" Vethrix felt a chill run through his body. "What do you mean?" Chen's smile widened. I mean that your fleet is very impressive, Counselor. But while you have been gathering ships, we have been gathering something else. Something you cannot defeat with weapons? What? Vethrix demanded. What have you been gathering? Chen stood up from the table and straightened her clothes. Hope, she said. We have been gathering hope, and hope, unlike ships, cannot be destroyed. She walked out of the room, leaving Vethrix with a feeling of dread that he could not explain. 3 days later, the fleet moved. 10,000 ships jumped through the Soul Gate, one emerging in human space with weapons charged and crews ready for battle. They found the human fleet waiting for them. 350 ships arranged in a defensive formation near Earth. Admiral Rekthal gave the order to advance. This would be over quickly. He did not know that far away in the Forbidden Zone, 3 human operatives had just teleported into position near the anchor. He did not know that a small metal cylinder was being armed. He did not know that everything was about to change. The final act of the revolution was about to begin. The Council Armada emerged from the Soul Gate like a swarm of angry insects, 10,000 ships spreading across the darkness of space. Every vessel carried weapons designed to kill worlds. Every crew had been trained to show no mercy. This was not a battle. Heck, this was supposed to be an execution. Admiral Rekthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Pride, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The human fleet was visible in the distance, a pathetic collection of 350 ships arranged in a defensive pattern around their homeworld. Begin the advance, he ordered. Standard formation. I want this finished before the day is out. The Armada began to move forward, a wave of destruction rolling toward Earth. On every ship, crews prepared for combat. On every bridge, commanders reviewed their attack plans. Victory was certain. How could it not be? Far away in a place that officially did not exist, 3 humans materialized out of thin air. The Forbidden Zone was exactly what its name suggested, a region of space where no one was allowed to go. Like warning buoys surrounded it, broadcasting threats in 1,000 languages. Automated defense platforms guarded every approach. The Council had spent millions of years making sure that no one could reach what lay at the heart of this empty space. But the humans had not come through normal space. They had teleported directly to their target. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen was not related to the ambassador, though they shared a surname. She was 32 years old, born on Mars, trained in special operations. She had volunteered for this mission, knowing that she might not come back. Position confirmed, she reported through her suit's communicator. We are 300 meters from the anchor. She looked up at the structure before her, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. The anchor was impossible to describe. It was made of materials that human science could not identify, shaped into forms that seemed to twist in directions that did not exist. Energy flowed through it in rivers of light, pulsing in patterns that made her eyes hurt. It was beautiful and terrifying, and older than anything she had ever seen. Beginning approach, she said. Her team moved carefully through the zero-gravity environment. There were 2 others with her, Sergeant Yusuf Ahmadi, an engineer who had helped design the bomb they carried. Private First Class Lin Wei, the youngest member of the team at only 23, chosen for her steady hands and cool head under pressure. They had practiced this mission hundreds of times in simulation. They knew exactly where to go and what to do. The bomb would be placed at the central nexus of the anchor, the point where all the energy flows converged. When it detonated, the resulting cascade would tear the ancient device apart. Council forces are mobilizing, Yusuf reported, checking his scanner. They detected our teleport signature. We have approximately 12 minutes before they reach this location. 12 minutes. Plenty of time. They just had to stay focused. At Earth, the Council Armada continued its advance. Admiral Rekthal watched the human ships with growing contempt. They were not even trying to run. Did they not understand that they were facing certain death? Human vessels are holding position, his tactical officer reported. They appear to be forming a defensive shell around the planet. Foolish, Rekthal said. They think they can protect their world by standing in our way. Signal the fleet, showing we will engage in 5 minutes. On the bridge of the human flagship, Admiral Kenji Okonkwo watched the approaching storm with calm eyes. He knew what his ships could do. He knew what they could not do. 350 against 10,000 was not a fight they could win through direct combat. But that was not the plan. All ships, he said into his communicator, execute pattern phantom. Keep them busy. Make them think we are fighting for our lives. The human fleet broke formation and began to teleport, ships disappearing and reappearing in random patterns around the Council Armada. They fired as they appeared, launching missiles and energy beams that splashed against Council shields. Then they vanished again before the enemy could return fire. It was like trying to swat gnats with a hammer. The Council ships twisted and turned, trying to track the flickering human vessels. Their weapons fired into empty space where ships had been moments before. Their sensors went crazy trying to track targets that were never in the same place twice. "What are they doing?" Rekthal demanded. "This is not a battle. This is harassment." "They appear to be using their teleportation technology to create confusion," his tactical officer replied. "Our targeting systems cannot lock on to vessels that keep disappearing." "Then flood the area with fire," Rekthal ordered. "Saturation bombardment. They cannot teleport if there is nowhere safe to appear." The Council fleet opened up with everything they had. Space around Earth filled with energy weapons and explosions, a storm of destruction that turned the darkness bright. Human ships died in the chaos, would caught by random fire or overwhelmed when their teleportation drives ran dry. But for every human ship that fell, the others kept dancing. They were not trying to win. They were trying to buy time. In the Forbidden Zone, Sarah Chen reached the central nexus of the anchor. Up close, the ancient structure hummed with power that she could feel through her suit. It was like standing next to a beating heart, a heart that had pumped life into the Council's empire for millions of years. "Package is armed," Yusuf reported, securing the resonance bomb to the nexus point. "Timer is set for 10 minutes. "Council ships entering the zone," Linway announced, her voice tight with tension. 6 cruisers, closing fast." Sarah looked at the timer, counting down. 10 minutes. The Council ships would be here in 8. It was going to be close. "So can we teleport out now?" she asked Yusuf. He shook his head. "The energy field from the anchor is interfering with our drives. We need to get at least 500 meters away before we can jump." 500 meters. Through open space with Council ships bearing down on them. "Then we move," Sarah said. "Fast as we can. Let's go." They pushed off from the anchor and flew through the emptiness, their suit thrusters firing at maximum power. Behind them, the timer continued its countdown. 9 minutes. At Earth, the battle had become a slaughter. Human ships fell one by one, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of fire that the Council fleet was putting out. Admiral Okonkwo watched the casualty reports with a heavy heart. Every ship that died was a crew of good people who would never see home again. But they had known the risks, and they had volunteered anyway, and they had bought the time that was needed. "How much longer?" he asked his communications officer. "The team reports they are in position. Detonation in 8 minutes. 8 minutes. They just had to survive 8 more minutes. "All ships," Okonkwo ordered. "Maximum effort. Give them everything we have." The human fleet responded with a fury that surprised even the Council commanders. Ships teleported in waves, appearing inside the Council formation itself, firing at point-blank range before jumping away again. It was suicide tactics, the kind of desperate fighting that came from people who had nothing left to lose. On the Dominion's Pride, Admiral Vrechthal watched the chaos with growing unease. Something was wrong. The humans were fighting too hard, taking too many risks. This was not how a species fought when they were trying to survive. This was how they fought when they were trying to distract. "What are they hiding?" he muttered to himself. Then his communications officer looked up with a face pale with shock. "Admiral, we have received an emergency transmission from the Forbidden Zone. Human intruders have been detected near the anchor." Vrechthal felt his blood turn to ice. The anchor, the source of all Council power. If the humans destroyed it, the gates would fall. Everything would fall. "How many ships can we send?" he demanded. 6 cruisers are already responding, but they will not arrive in time. 7 minutes. In the Forbidden Zone, Sarah Chen and her team were running out of options. The Council cruisers were closing fast, and their suit thrusters were not designed for this kind of speed. And they were still 300 meters from the minimum safe distance for teleportation. "They are locking weapons on us," Linway reported. "Keep moving," Sarah ordered. "Do not stop for anything." A beam of energy cut through the space beside them, missing Lin Wei by less than a meter. Another shot passed over Sarah's head. The council gunners were finding their range. 6 minutes. "We are not going to make it," Yusuf said, his voice flat with acceptance. "They will hit us before we can jump." Sarah looked at the approaching ships, then at the distance still remaining. He was right. The math did not work. They were going to die here, in the empty space around an ancient machine that had enslaved the galaxy for longer than humanity had existed. But the bomb would still go off. The anchor would still fall. That was what mattered. "Could he keep going anyway?" she said. "Every meter counts." 5 minutes. On Earth, Admiral Okonkwo received the news that his team was under fire. He closed his eyes for a moment, knowing what that meant. Those people were probably going to die. They had accepted that possibility when they volunteered, but accepting it did not make it easier. "How long until detonation?" he asked. 5 minutes. "And how long until the council ships reach the team?" 3 minutes. 2 minutes of fire. 2 minutes of dodging. 2 minutes of hoping for a miracle. Okonkwo looked at his tactical display, at the swirling chaos of the battle around Earth. His ships were dying. His people were dying. But they had done what they needed to do. "All ships," he said, "prepare for emergency teleport to Rally Point Omega on my signal. We jump in exactly 5 minutes, whether we are ready or not." 4 minutes. In the Forbidden Zone, the Council cruisers opened fire in earnest. The space around Sarah's team filled with weapons, fire, beams of energy, and explosive projectiles, filling every available path. Lin Wei screamed and went spinning away, her suit venting atmosphere from a hole in her side. "Lin!" Sarah shouted. "Keep going!" Lin Wei called back, her voice weak but determined. "I am done anyway. Finish the mission." Sarah wanted to go back for her. Everything in her training, everything in her heart, told her to never leave a team member behind. But Lin Wei was right. The mission was what mattered. "I am sorry," Sarah whispered. 3 minutes. Yusuf took a hit next, a glancing blow that damaged his thruster pack. He started tumbling, unable to control his movement. "I can still jump," he reported, his voice strained. "I just cannot fly anymore." "Go! Get to minimum distance." Sarah pushed on alone. Behind her, she could hear the council ships getting closer. She could feel the heat of near misses warming her suit. She was not going to make it. She knew she was not going to make it. 2 minutes. A beam cut across her leg, searing through her suit and burning into her flesh. She screamed but kept flying, using her arms now as much as her damaged thrusters. The pain was incredible. She had never felt anything like it. 100 meters to minimum distance. 1 minute. The council ships were right behind her now. She could see them in her rear display, their weapons charging for a final shot that would end her life. She was not going to make it. She was going to die 50 meters short of safety. And then something incredible happened. Space around the council ships suddenly filled with other vessels. Human ships teleporting in from the battle at Earth. Not the combat ships that had been fighting the main fleet. These were smaller, faster ships, the kind used for search and rescue. They had not been part of the battle plan. They had come anyway. The rescue ships opened fire on the council cruisers, catching them completely by surprise. Explosions bloomed against the cruiser shields. One ship took a hit to its engine and started spinning out of control. "Go!" someone shouted over the communications channel. "We will cover you!" Sarah did not ask questions. She flew as hard as she could, burning every last bit of fuel her suit had, pushing through pain that should have been crippling. She crossed the minimum distance line just as the timer hit 10 seconds. She activated her teleportation drive. Space folded around her. She appeared on the bridge of Admiral Okonkwo's flagship, collapsing onto the deck with blood streaming from her wounded leg. "Did it work?" she gasped. "Did the bomb go off?" Okonkwo was staring at the main display. His face was completely still. "Look," he said, pointing. Sarah turned her head to see. On the screen, the Forbidden Zone was visible in long-range sensors. At the center of the image was a light brighter than any star, an explosion that seemed to tear reality itself apart. The anchor, the ancient device that had powered every gate in the galaxy for millions of years, was dying. And as it died, the shock waves spread outward through subspace, touching every gate in the galaxy simultaneously. On 1,000 worlds, jump gates flickered. On 1,000 worlds, Senna, the lights went out. On 1,000 worlds, the chains finally broke. At Earth, the Council Armada felt the shockwave hit. Every ship shuddered as the energy pulse passed through them. Sensors went haywire. Power systems fluctuated. And on every bridge, the same terrible realization struck at once. The gates were dead. Admiral Vrechthal stared at his display in horror. The gate they had come through, the gate that was supposed to take them home, was nothing but a cold ring of dead metal now. Every gate in the galaxy had gone dark at the same moment. "What have you done?" he whispered. Admiral Okonkwo's voice came through on every channel, broadcast to every ship in both fleets. "You came to our home to destroy us. You brought 10,000 ships to crush 300. You thought your numbers made you powerful. But your real power was never in your ships. It was in the gates. And now the gates are gone." The Council fleet was in chaos. Commanders shouted orders that no one followed. Ships tried to flee, but there was nowhere to flee to. Without gates, the nearest Council world was centuries away at normal speed. They were stranded. "We could destroy you all right now," Okonkwo continued. "We could teleport bombs onto your bridges, into your engines, inside your reactors. We could kill every one of you before you even knew what was happening. We have that power." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But we are not going to do that. We are not going to become what you were. Instead, we are offering you a choice. Surrender your weapons, accept our help, and we will use our teleportation technology to send you home to your families. The war is over, not because you lost and we won, but because the thing you were fighting for no longer exists. The gates are gone. The Council's power is gone. We can either help each other build something new, or we can keep killing each other until no one is left." Silence stretched across space. Then one by one, Council ships began powering down their weapons. Admiral Vrechthal looked at the humans on his display, this impossible species that had appeared from nowhere and changed everything. He thought about fighting. He thought about dying with honor, going down in battle against an enemy that had cheated by breaking the rules of reality itself. Then he thought about his family, waiting for him on a world that was now impossibly far away. He thought about his children, who had never done anything wrong except be born into a galaxy controlled by power-hungry rulers. "All ships," he said, his voice tired and old. "Stand down. The war is over." He did not know what would come next. No one did. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy was free to find out. The first weeks after the anchor fell were chaos. Across the galaxy, billions of beings woke up to find that the world they knew had ended overnight. Trade routes that had existed for thousands of years suddenly meant nothing. Supply chains that fed entire planets collapsed. Ships that had been traveling through gates found themselves stranded in systems they had only planned to pass through. On some worlds, there was panic. People fought over food and fuel, not understanding what had happened or when things would go back to normal. Governments that had depended on Council support found themselves alone and helpless. Old conflicts that the Council had suppressed with the threat of gate closure erupted again into violence. But on other worlds, there was something different. There was hope. The resistance networks that humanity had built over the past months came alive. Ships equipped with teleportation drives began appearing in the troubled systems, bringing supplies and engineers, and the most important gift of all, they brought the technology that could set people free. The Kethmari were among the first to receive full teleportation capability. Their hidden factories had been working overtime, producing drives and training crews. Within 2 weeks of the anchor's destruction, they had 100 ships that could go anywhere in the galaxy without asking permission. "Amrinawat, we have waited 3,000 years for this," said Vrelkath, the old resistance leader, as he watched the first Kethmari vessel teleport away on its maiden voyage. 3,000 years of being told where we could go and what we could do. Never again. The Voidborn spread the technology even faster. Their artificial minds could learn and adapt quicker than organic brains, and they had no need for the slow training that other species required. Within a month, every Voidborn ship in the galaxy had been upgraded. They became the carriers of freedom, teleporting to systems in crisis and sharing the knowledge that could save them. 7 of many led the largest relief mission in galactic history. His fleet appeared in system after system, delivering food to the hungry, medicine to the sick, and technology to anyone who wanted it. Why? He asked for nothing in return. When other species questioned his generosity, his answer was always the same. For 2,000 years, we were denied the right to give, he said. Now we have that right, and we will use it. This is what freedom means. Not just the freedom to take, but the freedom to give. Not everyone accepted help gracefully. The old council species, the 12 ancient races that had ruled the galaxy for so long, found themselves in an impossible position. Their power had been built on control of the gates. Without that control, they were just 12 species among thousands, with no special claim to authority. Some adapted. The crystal hegemony had always been traitors at heart, and they quickly learned that teleportation opened up markets they had never been able to reach before. They threw themselves into commerce with the same energy they had once used to dominate their rivals. Within a year, they were richer than they had ever been under the old system. Others struggled. The Void Collective, who had provided most of the Council's military power, did not know how to exist without enemies to fight. Many of their veterans simply sat in their ships, waiting for orders that never came. Some turned to piracy, raiding trade routes and terrorizing merchants. They became the first problem that the new galactic order had to solve. But most of the old Council species fell somewhere in between. They resented the loss of their power, but they also recognized that fighting against the new reality was pointless. The technology was out there now. It could not be taken back. The best they could do was adapt and try to find a place in the changed galaxy. The Dominion Councilor Vethrix's species fell the hardest. For 3,000 years, the Dominion had been the face of the Council, the hand that held the whip, the voice that pronounced judgment on those who disobeyed. They had made enemies of every species in the galaxy. Now those enemies remembered. The first revolution happened on a world called Kethvar, where Dominion administrators had ruled the local population for 2 centuries. The administrators woke up one morning to find their compound surrounded by millions of angry citizens. Their calls for help went unanswered. The gates were dead, and no relief fleet was coming. The revolution was bloody. The administrators were dragged from their beds and put on trial for crimes that dated back generations. Some were executed, others were imprisoned. A few managed to teleport out before they could be captured, fleeing to systems where the Dominion still held some power. Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. Populations that had been oppressed for centuries finally had the chance to strike back, and many of them took it. The Dominion Empire, which had once stretched across a quarter of the galaxy, collapsed in weeks. Vethrix himself was captured, trying to escape from the Council capital station. He was found hiding in a storage compartment, disguised as a maintenance worker. The being who had once commanded the greatest empire in galactic history was dragged out by Voidborn security officers and placed in a cell to await trial. "How does it feel?" one of his guards asked. "How does it feel to be powerless?" Vethrix did not answer. He sat in his cell and stared at the wall and wondered how everything had gone so wrong. He had been so certain of his power. He had been so confident that the old order would last forever. He had never imagined that it could all be taken away by a species that had been nothing but a joke a few years ago. The trial of Councilor Vethrix became the most watched event in galactic history. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to bear witness. The charges took 3 days just to read: genocide, enslavement, destruction of homeworlds, suppression of free thought. The list went on, a catalog of horrors that stretched back thousands of years. Vethrix was found guilty on all counts. The sentence was death. But Ambassador Chen, representing humanity at the trial, stood up to speak before the sentence was carried out. "I do not come here to defend this being," she said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. "He is guilty. He deserves punishment. But I want to say something about what comes next." She looked around at the assembled representatives, species that had suffered under council rule for millennia. "Revenge is easy. Justice is hard. If we simply kill everyone who was part of the old system, we become what they were. We become rulers who use violence to solve our problems. We become the thing we fought against." She paused, letting her words settle. "Vethrix will die. He has earned that death, but let him be the last. Let us build something better from this moment forward. Let us prove that we can be more than what they were." Vethrix was executed the next day, but Chen's words stayed with the galaxy. They became a guiding principle for the new order that was emerging. Justice, not revenge. Building, not destroying. Freedom, not control. Earth established the Open Transit Initiative, a program to share teleportation technology with any species that wanted it. There were no conditions attached, no loyalty tests, no treaties to sign. Anyone who asked received the knowledge they needed to build their own drives. But why? Asked the representative from the Machine Collective, a species that had spent centuries calculating the advantages of every decision. You gain nothing from this. You give away your greatest advantage and ask for nothing in return. The human representative smiled. We gain a galaxy where everyone can go where they want and do what they want. That is not nothing. That is everything. Not everyone trusted humanity's motives. Some species refused the technology, certain that there must be hidden strings attached. Others accepted it, but watched the humans suspiciously, waiting for the betrayal that they were sure would come. The betrayal never came. 5 years passed, then 10. The galaxy transformed in ways that no one had predicted. Trade flourished as species that had never been able to afford gate access suddenly found themselves able to reach markets across the galaxy. New businesses sprang up, new industries emerged. The economy grew faster than it had in thousands of years. Culture flourished too. Species that had been isolated for millennia discovered each other and shared their art, their music, their stories. A Kethmari opera was performed before a crowd that included beings from 100 different worlds. A void-born artist created a sculpture that could only be viewed by teleporting through it. A human composer wrote a symphony that incorporated sounds from every species in the galaxy. Science advanced at a pace that startled even the most optimistic observers. Without the Council restricting the flow of information, researchers from different species began collaborating in ways that had never been possible before. A cure for a disease that had plagued the crystal hegemony for centuries was discovered by a team that included humans, Kethmari, Voidborn, and a dozen other species working together. What to the old Dreth Kai elder who had once refused to join the revolution, lived long enough to see his people rise again. The scattered survivors of that ancient species gathered on a new homeworld, a planet they chose for themselves rather than one assigned to them by the Council. They named it Remembrance, and they built a monument to everyone who had died in the old war against the Council. James Okonkwo, the human who had first made contact with them, attended the dedication ceremony. "You were right to doubt us," he told the elder. "Everyone who promised freedom before had failed. We could have failed too." The elder looked up at the monument, his white scales gleaming in the light of an unfamiliar sun. "You did not fail," he said. "You gave us something we had forgotten how to have. You gave us hope that was not foolish." The Galactic Assembly was formed 10 years after the anchor fell. It was not a government in the traditional sense. It had no power to tax, no army to enforce its decisions, no control over the movement of ships or people. It was simply a place where species could come together to talk, to negotiate, to solve problems through words rather than weapons. The Assembly's first major project was cleaning up the remnants of the old Council. The Void Collective pirates were hunted down and brought to justice. The lingering wars between former subjects of the Council were mediated and resolved. The species that had suffered the most under the old system received aid and support to rebuild. Ambassador Chen retired from diplomatic service at the age of 70. At her farewell ceremony, she was asked to reflect on what humanity had accomplished. "We did not accomplish anything," she said. "We just opened a door. Every species that walked through that door chose to do so on their own. The galaxy is free not because of us, but because everyone in it decided that freedom was worth fighting for." General Stone passed away peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by family and friends. His memorial service was attended by military leaders from dozens of species, all of whom had come to respect the human who had planned the revolution. Admiral Okonkwo lived another 30 years after the war, long enough to see his grandchildren travel to worlds that humans had never visited before. He spent his last years writing a history of the revolution, wanting to make sure that future generations understood what had happened and why. Dr. Yuki Tanaka never stopped working. After the revolution, she returned to her research, always pushing the boundaries of what teleportation could do. She improved the technology again and again, making it smaller, more efficient, easier to use. Her last major breakthrough came when she was 93 years old, a device that could teleport entire cities across intergalactic distances. "What will you do next?" her assistants asked her. She smiled, the same smile she had worn when she first teleported a coffee mug across her laboratory on Titan. Next? Next, I want to see what is beyond the edge of the galaxy. There has to be something interesting out there. She never made that trip. She died a year later, working in her laboratory until the very end. But her successors continued her work, and 50 years after her death, the first human ship teleported out of the Milky Way and into the space between galaxies. They found something interesting, but that is another story. The galaxy that humanity had helped to free continued to grow and change. New problems emerged, as they always do. New conflicts arose. New challenges tested the bonds between species. But the most important thing had changed forever. The gates were gone. The council was gone. No single species controlled where anyone else could go. Every being in the galaxy had the same fundamental right that humanity had fought for: the right to move, the right to choose, the right to be free. In the great archive of the Assembly, where the history of the revolution was preserved for future generations, there was a small display case. And inside it sat a white coffee mug with a picture of a cat wearing a space helmet. It was the first object ever successfully teleported, the beginning of everything that followed. Visitors often asked why such an ordinary object was given such a prominent place. The archivists always gave the same answer: because great changes do not always start with great events. Sometimes they start with small things, humble things, things that no one expects to matter. This mug reminds us that any one of us might be holding the seed of the next revolution. All we need is the courage to plant it. The galaxy was free. It had cost blood and sacrifice and the destruction of an empire that had ruled for 12,000 years. It had also started with a cup of coffee. Somehow that seemed appropriate. The end of the story of humanity's revolution was also the beginning of a million other stories. Species that had been oppressed now had the chance to build their own futures. Beings that had been denied hope now had the chance to dream. Worlds that had been isolated now had the chance to reach out and touch the stars. This was the gift that humanity had given to the galaxy. Not teleportation, though that was part of it. Not the destruction of the council, though that was necessary. The real gift was the idea that things did not have to be the way they had always been. The real gift was the proof that even the most powerful system could be changed by those with the courage to try. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a young scientist on a distant world looked up at the stars and wondered what mysteries they held. She had a crazy idea, arrange something that everyone told her was impossible. But she remembered the stories she had been told as a child about a human scientist who had done the impossible by refusing to accept that it could not be done. She went back to her laboratory and got to work. The next revolution was already beginning.